Well, in any event, coming
So
back
you're
to
in the middle of a presidential search. How did Peter McPherson come to be named president of Michigan State University?
well, you want the popular version or you want the facts?
I want the facts and the Traxler perspective.
Well, this is kind of like making, it's like the difference between watching a legislative process and also watching sausage being made. So we're going to talk about sausage. And we had a search committee. They made me chairman of it. I'm not sure how that happened, but they did. I just got there.
You'd given them their building.
Yeah, well, my colleagues weren't impressed with that. I think it was they couldn't decide among themselves who should be. So I'm the kid, just fresh kid off the, the trolley, and okay, you're it.
You commanded respect. Go ahead. So you're chairman of the search committee.
So there we are. And how do we go about this? We established the process. We were very inclusive with all of the competing interests on the campus, blacks, feminists. I don't think we were, they figured white males. It was a very difficult task. Everybody wanted their candidate based on what their special interest was. And we thought by clearly defining how this process should be conducted, it would result in a successful search. And I began to question and worry about some of my Democrat friends on the committee, on the board, in terms of their commitment to finding a highly qualified professional educator, administrator, to chair Michigan State. I felt a national search was necessary. Some of them wanted to go in-house. Some of them, the Republicans felt we should do a national search. So there were 3 Republicans and me and 4 Democrats. And I thought the 4 of us would be able eventually to come up with a candidate that even my Democrat friends and colleagues would accept, a national figure, so to speak. Well, some time went by, and it became clear that wasn't going to happen. And I began to sense that my Republican colleagues were drifting off, and I was standing alone, and so I resigned as the chairman of the search committee.
Wow.
Because I was a distinct minority.
Okay.
And
so then what?
The process went forward, and there was sort of universal agreement to select Peter McPherson. And I looked at Peter's resume, and I wasn't particularly impressed with his academic qualifications, which is not to speak in any way derogatory towards Peter as an individual. He and I, while we differed in the role of president versus the board, which is always, there always should be a sense of dynamic tension there. I wanted the board to pick its own secretary of the board. That was opposed by all administrators and by board members. And
didn't Joel Ferguson have an important role in the selection of Peter McPherson?
Joel,
tell us the truth.
Well, Joel would tell you this himself. He manipulated everyone to his satisfaction.
Well, how did he do it in this respect?
In this respect, he understood that the governor was supportive, would be supportive of McPherson. They were colleagues and friends at Michigan State University as undergraduates and had remained so. And Joel seized on that as an opportunity to work a deal that would be to his advantage. He was keenly interested in putting up a state office building for the State House. And Joel will tell you that that fell through and the Democrats lost control. And he knew in order to achieve this goal, he would need the governor to get on board. He would need the Republicans in the House on board, since they now controlled the legislature. And he felt that a respectable deal could be made where he would assist the governor in getting McPherson appointed. In return, the governor would assist him in making sure that the legislature had adequate space and quarters. An admirable goal.
Leading to the Anderson House office building.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the governor had one caveat, and that was that Joel had to have a Republican partner. And Joel immediately advised the governor that would be the case, and he'd be back with him very shortly with a name. And that happened. They discussed certain, according to Joel, he told me all of this, they discussed various alternatives and came up with a partner for Joel.
And so then everything fell in place with all the other trustees, the Democrats and Republicans on the board.
Yes.
But you were looking at a way maybe to not run again for the board. You decided you'd had enough, or maybe to even leave it prematurely. And if so, how did that lead to your resignation from the board in return for an appointment by the governor? What happened?
That's interesting, because I was on the board about 3 months, Bill, and I realized that the world of academia was quite different from the one that I came from. Not that it wasn't political, it surely was, but the responsibilities of a board member are not carefully adhered to all the time by board members. They have perhaps individual agendas with the university that the administration is always happy to accommodate in return for fidelity and loyalty and a yes vote. So I'd been there only about 3 months, and at a board session, it wasn't a session, it was dinner at the president's house. After this had been in about March, April. I just casually said to the board, I will not be seeking re-election. I want to assure you of that. Well, of course, they didn't believe me. They couldn't imagine anyone not running for re-election to the board of MSU, whom I dearly loved and had graduated from and was closely affiliated with in different ways. And so they sort of pushed that aside.
But John Engler heard about it.
Pardon me?
But John Engler heard about it.
He knew I wasn't going to be a candidate, and John called me in my last year there and indicated that he had an interest in filling a vacancy on the board should there be a vacancy, and that it was necessary for him to make an appointment prior to the Republican State Convention, because he didn't want a self-starter coming out of the convention for the MSU board. John was very loyal to MSU, and he had a nominee in mind that was very talented and had widespread support among Republicans in many ways. And he suggested that we could reach an accommodation. If I wanted to leave the board early, he'd find a suitable appointment and something I'd be pleased with. So he had, and I told him, you know, I don't want to leave the board in March. I would prefer to do so in early July. And he said, we'll keep that as a deadline, because I got to get this done before the August Republican convention. It's okay. In the meantime, he suggested that his appointment secretary would be in touch with me, and she was, and we talked. She came up with an interesting proposal. She suggested the state gaming commission, which was in the midst of licensing the Detroit casinos.
Now, if it had been a gaming commissioner, a single person, like the lottery commissioner, which you fought for, you might have liked that.
If it had any power.
Right.
And it didn't have any power. And it doesn't have any power.
No.
The initiative, which set up the casinos in Detroit, the 3 casinos, was written by the proponents of the casinos. And so they intentionally wrote in a very weak oversight commission. And that's the law we got today. And it takes since it was an initiative, it takes about a 2/3 vote of the legislature to change a period in it, let alone establish a strong oversight of the gaming in this state.
So you said thanks, but no thanks.
I thanked her, and she understood why.
Then she came up with what, a judgeship?
A judgeship, which was interesting. Again, it was a judgeship that was terminal in the standpoint that it was here in Lansing, and there was a vacancy. I believe the judge had perhaps died. I'm not familiar with that detail. And the legislature then agreed with the Supreme Court to abolish that position.